Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. I am taking you to the Twilight Zone today, to the electric Kool-Aid universe of Jock World. Our guide will be Robert Lipsyte, the award-winning journalist who invented Jock World and made a career of railing against it. Lipsyte is an accidental sportswriter, according to his cheeky memoir, and you will meet him next. I'm happy to welcome Bob Lipsyte, star of radio, print, ESPN, formerly, the online journalism. Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
What is Jock World?
Well, Jock World is, in a sense, Hollywood sports. It's a way of approaching the games we play, and I know that you agree with me that sports is the most fun you can have with your body in public legally. But in many ways,
I do.
I've seen you. But it's been perverted. Sports has been perverted in this country into something really grotesque, hypocritical, and worse, really dangerous, particularly pro football, as we know.
Perverted, and how?
Well, the idea always was that this was the healthy way for families to get together, to people to reach their potential, for a currency of communication at the water cooler or wherever, if there are any left. But what it's been changed into is a kind of a bazaar, overpriced, grotesque, and I think in many ways a supplier of negative values to America. The kind of blustering intimidation of a Donald Trump is a good example, or Ted Cruz, is really a sense of jock culture or jock world. That's what you're taught. That's what coach teaches you. You know, get in their face, push them back, make them scared, and hurt them. It's not about coming together. It's not about having fun. It's not about being healthy. Which is not to say that, you know, on some grassroots levels, there are some wonderful programs for kids, for old people, where they can enjoy their bodies in public. But I think that it's really a shame. And I really have seen this in my lifetime as a sports writer, over 50 years. It going from an idea at one time that sports was a crucible of character. Here we would find out who you were and what you were made of, to then sports is where wars are won. You know, yeah. World War II was won on the playing fields of Eton.
The military associations and analogies with sports are all over the place. I mean,
totally.
How many sporting events have the Air Force flyovers? Right. I mean, I never understood that.
I don't know what the connection is.
Yeah, except that it's the, I guess, it's this military patriotism.
And
it's all tied up.
Also, I would add, you know, faux manhood, this kind of sense of macho that, you know, evolves out of sports. You know, who is really a man? You know, somebody can hit you, somebody that you're afraid of. The Gronk.
Patriots. Let's talk about one element of, or one part of what I imagine is Jock World, is college football. You're quoted as saying of college football, it's America's grandest monument to national hypocrisy. How did you mean that?
Well, from the very start, you know, when you're paying off, I mean, we remember Newt Rockne and Notre Dame. Right. You know, Newt Rockne was charged with making Notre Dame a great national university, which he did. Yeah. Great national university, which at that time probably didn't have a library, but it had a football team. So he went out and bought players. The Gipper. The Gipper was, kind of the equivalent of the ski bum. He went from college to college to college.
You say bought players.
Bought players, yeah. Hey, Gip, you want to come, play for the Irish? And, he died drunk in a snowbank. It was too bad. But that was the sense of what it was. So from the very beginning, it was a way for colleges to get over, to get national attention, to be on the Happy News Network. How do you ever read about a college unless there's, a fire or a rape or something bad happens? But college football kind of gave it a wonderful sense. And there are colleges out there, Alabama, University of Nevada at Las Vegas. People, colleges you might not really have heard of, who evolved into important national institutions.
Well, Alabama just won what's called the national
That's right.
Championship of college football. And that's why I was thinking about college football offhand here. What do you think of that whole spectacle, the playoffs now in college and the national championship, which happened to be Alabama against Clemson this year?
I find it harder and harder to look at college sports, basketball or football. I've kind of been damaged in some way. The first time I went to the Final Four, which is coming up real soon, I looked down at the court and I noticed, these two of the top teams in the country, and one has 4 African-American players, the other one has 5. And these are both universities whose African-American student population is around 7%. So how did that happen? And this is a big story. Are African Americans better athletes? Are they cheaper to buy? Is a gladiatorial class being created here? And I found it really very hard to focus on the game. I really had to say, no, that's not what you're here for. It's, how many baskets they score. And the same thing with college football. Some very bad things are happening out there that we're not paying attention to. They talk about, racial relations in America and racism. And they talk about the divides. Well, let's kind of look at this. What's happening here?
Well, the subject comes up with, since we're on college football, the subject comes up with Missouri University, where there was an on-campus protest against racism by the student body, or many of the student body. But then the football players got involved. And that seemed to tip the whole thing.
Yeah,
they got a president of the university canned.
Absolutely, and I had very mixed feelings about that, Tony. On the one hand, I loved the idea that these athletes were getting involved, and particularly black athletes getting involved. Because I go back to John Carlos and Tommy Smith at that Olympics. I remember I was at the Olympics in '68. And I saw the fists go up, and I remember thinking, that's all they're going to do? Because I had been covering the athletic revolution at that point. So I was happy about that. The other part of it, though, I thought, geez, aided by their coach, these Missouri athletes, coach making $4.5 million a year,
very nice.
Really put the pressure on to get rid of this $450,000 president. And do we really want the athletic department running the university that blatantly? So I had kind of mixed feelings about that, although I guess the idea of getting involved in a good cause is something you can't turn away from.
Should college athletes be paid?
Sure.
And how do you do that?
Well, you've got to make a decision because most college football programs don't make
money,
a profit, right? But those that do are very often terrific football teams with a university attached. In football team, they got some classes over here for other kinds of students who don't get full rides. But these guys are used, they're hurt, they're exploited. You know, they're one-year contracts, they're cast away, their images are used forever. So yeah, I would pay them. Maybe not, I don't know how it would work. Maybe not a full salary, but maybe enough that they could take girls out on dates, and maybe not to have to sexually assault them so much.
A noble thought,
Right.
at least. Let's turn to baseball. I'm going to throw another quote at you. By the way, we haven't said, and I hope it's understood, Bob wrote for many years for the Times, and twice, in fact, two different stays at the New York Times, and more recently was writing pieces, and still, I guess, for USA Today. Mm-hmm. Okay. A quote about baseball, you called it an incredibly complex contrivance that seems to have been created by a chauvinistic mathematician. I love that. I'm not sure what it means, but...
Well, actually, I was younger and smarter then. I'm not sure what it means.
Okay.
Actually, that quote is more true now than it was whenever I said it, because I find that, you know, I watch a lot of baseball. I love the Mets. I covered their first
I love
spring,
the Mets too.
I covered their first spring training. And so I have this really emotional place in my heart, even though I was born in the Bronx and
Me
a Yankee
too.
fan, right? Well, I want to just revel in things like, Dan Murphy and, the next star being stolen from somewhere else. And who really ran the team, the Wilpons or Madoff? I mean, I want to know the stories. I don't want to really know the analytics. I don't really want to know about left-handed pitchers on alternate Tuesdays whose curveballs went to right-handed batters. How many? And that seems to be what baseball has become.
Baseball in the news, of course, with the Hall of Fame vote recently, and one of the men inducted, there were suspicions, never proven, of PED use with Mike Piazza. Right. What do you make it now with the Hall of Fame and some of the big names that may or may not ever get in, Clemens and A-Rod and the rest? Pete Rose is another story, but there's this parsing by the baseball writers who elect the people to the Hall of Fame. There's this parsing of the steroid question. Did he, didn't he, should he go in, shouldn't he go? What do you make of all that?
Well, first of all, I was very lucky because the Times did not allow us to vote in any kind of those Hall of Fames or legacy things, and because of the conflict of interest. You're covering people and you're also supporting them financially. The Hall of Fame is really about your worth as a former player maybe quadruples if you get Hall of Fame. I mean, suddenly your signature on your baseball card really means something. So it's really very important. And that baseball writers have been outsourced. Well, the Hall of Fame outsourced baseball writers to do this for them. Right. The Hall of Fame should do it. So I'm kind of against the whole thing, but the idea of steroids, I mean, so what do we know about, okay, maybe you were taking steroids, but maybe the pitcher you were batting against was taking steroids too.
Of course.
And what about LASIK surgery? And what about all the other things? What about all the shots that the team doctor gave you? So I think that, I know that probably not you, but I know that I could take steroids for 10 years and still never hit a major league curveball. You probably could. You look like you're ready to do it. But so what all these drugs really did was made these guys who worked out every single day. I mean, every one of them, Clemens, A-Rod, anybody who has been tainted, Bonds for sure, pumped continually, but they were able to do it every day because with the HGH or the steroids, their bodies repaired quickly. It's a healing drug. It didn't make them suddenly able to hit balls that they wouldn't have hit otherwise.
So are you saying?
I'm saying let them in. let them all
Let him in.
Absolutely.
Well, you wrote a piece for
Let 'em
USA Today recently saying, what did you say? Let's forgive the guilty,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Let 'em in.
over. And let's look at their accomplishments. I mean, almost every single one of them would have made it in the Hall of Fame with or without. They were all on that level.
Well, the great quote about Barry Bonds, some manager, when he was asked about, does Bonds, who had bulked up, said something about his eyes. The steroids don't work in your eyes. I mean, it was something like that. To your point,
Absolutely, hand-eye coordination.
To your point,
right.
that the talent, extraordinary in his case, Barry Bonds, it was always there. If he enhanced it, okay, he enhanced it, but I'm not saying I condone that, but I can understand the distinction between native ability, natural talent, and what these things do for you.
There's another dirty little secret in here. A-Rod, Clemens, Barry Bonds were not liked by baseball writers. They were mean guys. They were not nice guys. They were hard to deal with, bad interviews, would blow you off. So the idea of, all right, you didn't talk to me, well, I'm not going to vote for you. So I think there's that aspect. Roger Maris, who was kind of a surly guy. I liked him a lot, actually, but he was kind of a surly guy. 61 home runs, beat Babe Ruth, a record that lasted a really long time. He's not in the Hall of Fame? Come on. The problem is Pete Rose, who everybody liked. He was a nice guy, but I think betting on your own games
and your own team, right? Yeah, your own games.
I think that's a line you really can't cross, because that goes to the validity of the games themselves. But pumping yourself up so that you can be better, so that you can win, so that you can entertain your fans and the ownership that absolutely turned a blind eye to all that steroids.
No question.
Come on.
No question. No.
Give me a break. Yeah.
Let's talk about the accidental sportswriter, Bob Lipsyte, a little bit. Accidental because...
Well, I was never a sports fan. My parents were, I was born in the Bronx, raised in Rego Park, Queens. My parents were public school teachers. My dad and I didn't go to the ballpark together. We went to the library every week.
You were the little nerdy fat kid.
I sure was. And my entire upper body strength has to do with how many books I was allowed to carry home from the library. And I graduated from Columbia. I needed a summer job before I went out to California to get what I thought would be a PhD degree in something important like romantic English poetry. I wanted to be a novelist. And I answered an ad in the New York Times for editorial assistant, which turned out to be copy boy
in the sports
department. Yeah. Hated the job, was not interested in sports. Didn't much like the nighttime copy editors. These, kind of these snarly old men, who love to butcher really great writers like Gay Talese. But I loved the paper. I loved the New York Times, and I loved the idea of journalism as a calling. And I kind of stayed, and I was incredibly lucky. I was promoted, and then you
became the boxing writer by accident because nobody thought the fight.
Cassius Clay, Sonny Liston, real boxing writer of the New York Times. Didn't want to bother going all the way down to Miami Beach for a fight that was going to last one round. Send the kid. I was the kid. Send the night rewrite kid, and they sent me down. I was around the same age as Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. We had a wonderful week together. I remember the whole week thinking, I only hope he does well enough that he's around for a while. And then in the greatest career move anybody's ever made for me, he becomes heavyweight champion of the world, becomes Muhammad Ali. I become the boxing writer.
You liked Ali a lot.
I did. I still do, yes.
Yeah. And, you come to these lucky accidents and, there's someone said luck is the residue of design, but I don't know if there was any design in this. But you come to these at a time with your social conscience, at a time that the country was developing, a social conscience, if you will, or at least there was turmoil. I mean, the civil rights was bubbling up, and you had this other view, contrarian view of the subject you're covering. I mean,
I don't know if it was contrarian. I had an enormous learning experience just before Ali. I wrote Dick Gregory's autobiography.
Right.
Nigger, it was called.
Right.
We regret the title of that sometimes, but the idea was that it was going to change, the use of the word.
Right.
So I came to Ali with over a year of spending time with Dick Gregory at protests, among civil rights leaders. And so I was kind of prepared for that aspect, more than I was for the boxing aspect, which I really had to catch up on.
Yeah. Sports and social consciousness, as you say, we're coming together in
Exactly.
the 60s, and you're there. You're at the confluence.
I was right there. People were just beginning to think, hey, this is really where a lot of the values about race and manhood and gender, or all these things are bubbling up in sports, and we're not talking about it.
Mm. What did you think of Dick Gregory? I mean, you're talking about writing.
I love Dick Gregory. I love the man who really let his career go down in the drain because he kept running off to demonstrations in the South. He understood, because he was very famous. For a brief time, he was very famous.
Yeah.
He had broken big at the Playboy Club in Chicago. He was on television. He was a major performer, but he understood that if he went to a demonstration, Huntley Brinkley would bring their TV cameras too, and those demonstrators wouldn't get beat up and killed. And so he felt it was his duty, in a sense, to protect them and give them that kind of national exposure. Well, club owners began to say, hey, we're going to book this guy and he's going to run off. And so his career kind of evaporated. I think that he made a big difference, and it was very noble. I loved him, still do.
I want to tell our audience that you're about to, not long from now, see a screen version of Mr. Lipsyte on the big screen with a movie being made from a novel you wrote.
Yeah, it was a young adult novel I wrote many, many years ago called One Fat Summer. It was semi-autobiographical, pretty autobiographical, about a fat kid and the summer that he lost all his weight. Donald Sutherland is the star. I think they're changing the name to Measure of a Man because fat is not a word we use much anymore. I kind of run into bad titles.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty excited about that because I know that whoever plays me on the screen is going to be cuter than I was.
And do you have a cameo?
No.
You're just the writer.
Yeah, I wish I had, known that you were interested because you would have been great.
I could have played you.
Yes.
Leonard Schechter, another sports writer, contemporary of you, at the Post, called you back page anarchist.
Did he really?
Yeah. Maybe apparently never to your face.
No, I didn't know that, and I'm really pleased and excited to hear that because he was an idol of mine. He was older than I was, and I think
He
wrote for the Post and then Look magazine. He was editor there. He was very brave, and he really stood up to coaches, and he was one of the first to really put it to Jock World that what you're doing is wrong.
And he broke the code. The code being beat writers didn't report what was going on off the field.
That's right.
And he one day reported a fight between Ralph Houck and Duran, I think.
Yeah, Ryan Duran, right.
And I mean, as minuscule as that sounds
You're
today.
right. It was cosmic. It was cosmic in that world. Right. And he did it for the New York Post, which was kind of a very traditional paper in those days in its coverage of sports. And he kind of changed the face of sports writing. It was very hard after that, you know, for guys who were kind of company men to hold their heads up anymore.
I guess, would you say, or is it going too far to say without a Schechter there wouldn't be a Boughton and Ball 4? But there would have been, because of who Boughton is, maybe there would have been a Ball 4 anyway.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, it was Len Schechter who really was the editor. We don't know how much writing and the stimulus. It was Jim Boughton's story, of course, and Jim Boughton is a force all by himself and very important. But it was Lenny who pushed them in that way. Lenny died at 47 of a leukemia that he kept very secret to the very end. It was a great loss to American sports writing.
What are you working on?
I'm finishing a novel, and I love the way you've been talking about Jock World today, and I think I have to write a book called Jock World.
I hope you will. I need the
residuals, the royalties, your picture on the cover, and I'm hoping you'll go around to shows like these and speak for me.
I can't speak for you because you speak too eloquently for yourself, but I will say that if this novel of yours comes to fruition and Hollywood buys it, I really want a part in it. It doesn't have to be the lead, just something.
I think you could be the lead.
Bob Lipsyte, it is a delight to talk to you.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching. We will see you next week.